Welcome into this week's NFL Best Bets show. Now we're down to the final 14 teams with 12 teams playing this weekend in the first round of the playoffs, the wild card round playoffs. Now we have 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and 1 on Monday Night Football. Last week I had 2 parlays in these videos. We went 4-0 and 4-0, bringing the season record to just over 500 at 19-17. Now I have 2 more parlays for this week's wild card round, covering a wide range of outcomes. I'm going to try to get creative with some of these as we have less games to choose from. Now, if you like these bets and stats, please help by liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more content this year. Now, parlay number 1, we're going to go to the Steelers and the Bills game. Steelers are a solid 5-3 on the road, and they're riding a 3-game winning streak, but they come up against a team in even better form in Buffalo, who've won 5 straight themselves, and they're 7-2 at home. Pittsburgh's offense has improved with Mason Rudolph in the last few weeks, but this is still a third-string quarterback who couldn't beat out Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett for playing time. Earlier this season, Steelers' offense is still 28th, and they scored to 17.9 points per game. Rudolph has been effective, but he has just 3 passing touchdowns despite getting 3 wins in just over his 3 starts. They could choose to lean on the run game with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, but Buffalo is 7th against the run. Harris could be a good prop bet, though, as well. He's gone over 100 yards in back-to-back games, and in a game with wind and snow and cold weather, which likely means both teams will be focusing on the run game, he could be worth a bet for props. Speaking of props, Josh Allen has thrown the second most interceptions this season, and he's done so at least throwing 1 in 12 of the last 13 games. And you could still get Allen to throw just 1 interception at minus 110 odds, so that looks like a good bet there as well. Pittsburgh has been dealt a huge blow with TJ Watt, the league's sack leader with 19 sacks. He's been ruled out of this game with a knee injury. Steelers are rarely and basically never a good bet without their defensive leader. They're in fact 1-10 straight up, 4-6-1 ATS without Watt in the lineup. Now, double-digit favorites, which is what Buffalo is here, about 9.5, 10 points right now. They are 7-2 ATS in the wild card games since 2005, but Buffalo themselves go against that grain. They're 0-4 ATS as double-digit favorites this season, and they're 0-8 if you go back further into last year. Josh Allen alone is 0-7 ATS as a double-digit favorite. But still, Buffalo at home here as a big favorite should still be able to get the win. They don't need to cover by 10 points for this parlay. They just need to get the win on the money line. Buffalo money line to kick it off, and we will go to Packers and Cowboys in the next leg of this parlay. Dallas is a perfect 8-0 at home this season, and that goes back even further to last year, where they're now 16-0. At home this season, Dallas has wins by points of 20, 35, 23, 32, 35, 6, and 20, and then 1 point against Detroit recently in Week 17. But mostly some big wins by 20 or more points, usually at home. Dallas has the second highest point differential, second highest point differential in the league overall, a plus 194, and most of that has come at home where they've outscored their opponents by 172 points. For Green Bay, they let Bryce Young and Baker Mayfield throw for over 300 yards passing in recent games, and they'll be facing a big step up now with Dak Prescott, the league's leading touchdown passer. Now, Jordan Love, though, has improved down the stretch. He has 18 touchdowns, just 1 interception in his last number of games, and that leaves him second in touchdown passes, just 4 back of Dak himself. This game should see points. The total is set at 50.5 points. Now, Prescott's 21-2, straight up as a home favorite of 7 or more points. Packers are improving, but they're still the youngest team in the league. I think Dallas at home, when you've won 16 games in a row at home, that's a streak I want to keep riding. So whether they cover or not, let's go Dallas to win at home. They're the more seasoned and more seasoned team, more experienced team, and have been dominant at home. So Dallas to win, second leg of the parlay. In the third leg, rather than just going money lines or totals, I'm going to a scoring prop, and it's Rams and Lions. I'm going to go both teams to score 2 touchdowns or more. Let's look at some stats here between these teams. For the Rams, if you were to do this prop, which you can find at some books, I like to bet it at Bet365. You can go over 1.5 or over 2.5. Just pick team touchdown totals individually and combine them. For the Rams, both teams scored 2 touchdowns. It's on a 7-0 run. The Rams have scored 21 or more points in all 7 of those games, but they've given up 20 points in each of the last 5. Scores in those games have been 21-20, 26-25, 30-22, 29-20, 37-31. Go back a little bit further, and it's also 36-19, 37-14. So still, even with all that scoring, though, this game's totals at 51.5. If you were betting the over-under, only 3 of those 7 games, despite all of those scoring, would have gone over 51.5. Season long, only 6 of their games would have gone over 51.5 as well, but they've also had 2 other games come very close, finishing right on 51. For Detroit, both teams have scored 2 touchdowns, is on a 9-1 run. If not for a botched 2-point attempt against Dallas, where they only scored, Detroit got 19 points. Detroit is the only other game where they didn't score at least 22 or more points during their last 10 games, and that was a 28-13 loss to Chicago. Also, Detroit has scored 30 or more points in 6 of those past 10 games, but they have allowed 20 or more points defensively in 8 of those past 9 games as well. Back to the scoring, and Detroit on the season overall, they've scored 20 or more points in 15 of 17 games. Now back to the Rams. Stafford runs the league's 10th best passing game, and he'll be facing the league's 27th ranked passing defense in the Lions. Stafford threw for 317 yards in Week 17 against the Giants, but he has just 1 passing touchdown. He did have multiple touchdown passes in each of his previous 5 games before that. The Lions have given up multiple touchdown passes to opposing quarterbacks in each of their past 3 games, giving up 2 to Nick Mullins twice, as well as Dak Prescott. Mullins alone has thrown for over 800 yards against Detroit in the past 3 weeks as they've played the Vikings 2 of their last 3 games. Let's turn to the other quarterback, Jared Goff. Goff has thrown multiple touchdown passes only twice in his past 5 games, but he did have a 5-touchdown game in that stretch, and he's thrown multiple touchdown passes in 6 of his past 9 games. So both quarterbacks alone very capable of putting up some points in this game. The Rams only allowed 1 touchdown pass to opposing QBs in each of their past 2 games, but if you look at those games, it was a meaningless game against the 49ers, no Brock Purdy. And the week prior, it was the Giants and Tyrod Taylor. Before that, they had allowed quarterback touchdown passes of 3, 3, 3, and 2. There's likely no Laporta for the Lions, who got injured last week, but between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, there just has to be points in this game. I can't see it any other way. I don't want to worry about who wins the game or even going over or under. So let's just go both teams to score over 1.5 touchdowns. So if you do LA and Detroit, 2 touchdowns each, Dallas to win, Buffalo to win, you can come on right about even money. It's minus 102 right now over at Bet365. So I have one more parlay going into a bunch of different games, and this one is all over the map because we're running out of options, so I want to get creative here. You won't be able to do this parlay necessarily at every book, but you can at Bet365. You likely can at DraftKings and some of the other books as well to let you combine different props and different same-game parlays and stuff like that. Bet365 has a same-game parlay plus where you can combine multiple SGPs into one bet, which is what I've done to create this. Let's kick it off with Browns and Texans. The Browns won on Christmas Eve, 36-22, but it came without C.J. Stroud for the Texans, and those 22 points are pretty deceiving because they came at the end of the game when Houston was getting smashed. Still, Davis Mills did manage to get those 2 touchdowns versus the Browns. Stroud should be able to do something similar. Browns may be first in yards allowed per game on defense, but their defense has been much poorer on the road than at home. On the road, they've given up 26, 38, 24, 31, 29, 36, 22, and 31 points. The games have gone over at the highest rate this season at 11-6. Now, rookie QBs, which would be Stroud, are just 2-6 straight up in their past 8 first-time playoff games. And Joe Flacco is 10-5 straight up in the playoffs. He's 5-0 straight up in the wild card round, and he's 11-4 ATS in his playoff career. So that is some solid trends for the Browns. But Houston's only failed to score at least 10 points twice this season, and both of those games came on the road. They'll be at home here. The Texans will also own a massive advantage in the turnover department. Houston has turned the ball over a league best just 14 times, while Cleveland has given it away a league worst 37 times. Overall, the Texans own a .10 turnover differential. It's tied for 5th best, while the Browns are -9, and it's tied for 26th in the league. To add to both, so I'm going to go both teams to score 10 or more points in this game as the first part of the same game parlay in this game. You might even be able to go both teams to score 2 touchdowns like I did in the other game, but let's go both to get 10 or more points, and then to make this a little bit better because that alone is not a great good value bet. Let's go to a prop and go tight end David Njoku. Now, last week, Browns tight end Njoku had 6 catches for 134 yards. He also has had catch totals of 6, 10, and 6 with receiving totals of 44, 104, and 91 yards in the games before that. The Texans have given up 100 catches to opposing tight ends this season. Only the Bengals with 107 have given up more than that. Meanwhile, the 975 yards they've given up to the position is also the 4th most in the league. Njoku has finished with 3 or more catches in 14 of 16 games this year. You could go higher if you wanted to. So I'm going to go 3 or more catches for Njoku. You could go even further if you wanted. He's finished with 4 or more in 13 of 16. and 5 or more catches in 9 of 16. But for me, this same game parlay will be both teams to get 10 or more points and Njoku to have 3 or more receptions. Let's move along to Dolphins and Chiefs. Another game on Saturday. This is the late game on Saturday. And to me, this is the hardest game. The Chiefs are probably the better team. They are favored in this game. They will be playing at home, and they did beat the Dolphins 21-14 in Germany when they played overseas earlier this year. But their offense is just bad, as we've all seen on a week-to-week basis. They don't really put up many points. It's a struggle unless Mahomes does something spectacular. They are ranked about mid-pack at 15th. In recent weeks, they've lost to the Packers and the Bills. They struggled against New England. They lost to the Raiders before ending the year with a win over Jake Browning and the Bengals, and then a meaningless game where they won over the Chargers, where both teams were playing their backups. Miami is the first-ranked offense, but they're littered with injuries on both offense and defense. 3 of their 4 secondary starters could miss out or are dealing with injuries and could be slowed. But Kansas City, they really just don't have much to exploit that with very unreliable receivers. Even Travis Kelce hasn't been playing very well. Rashee Rice is really the only reliable one they've had lately. It's hard to see Kansas City blowing anyone out here despite being about 4.5-point favorites right now. Miami, though, it's hard to get on their side considering they're 0-9 straight up and 2-7 ATS in games when the temperature is below 40 degrees. And that will be the case. That's what it looks like it's going to be on Saturday. A very cold game, one of the coldest games ever in Kansas City and in the league. Now this could be, it's just bad news for Miami. You have a bunch of players that are used to playing in the heat, and they're going to be playing in one of the coldest games. Tua has a bad record in that scenario, and the team overall has a bad record, winless in 9 games in that scenario. And then there's Miami's record just versus good teams in general. They're 1-5 versus playoff teams this year, and they've been outscored by 91 points. I just don't know if I trust either of these teams right now, but I don't think KC gets blown out at home. So the first part of this same game parlay will be Chiefs plus 8.5, taking them all the way to underdog. But like the first bet, won't pay off huge by itself. So let's create a same game parlay. Their most reliable receiver, like I said, Rashee Rice. Rice has 4 more catches in 7 straight games, and he's averaged 6.71 catches in those 7 games. In 16 games this year, he's made 3 or more catches in 14 of them. So this same game parlay will be Chiefs plus 8.5 with Rashee Rice to have at least 3 or more catches. Moving on, we're going back to Pittsburgh in Buffalo, and we'll take some props from this game as well. Pittsburgh, they had a couple heavy defeats earlier this season, 23 and 24-point losses, but they haven't lost by more than 17 points since October 1st, so they could be a bet to keep this game close. But let's focus on the total here, and this is all weather related. It's sunk from 42.5 all the way down to 33.5. Because of the weather, it's calling for low 20s, snow, 25-mile-per-hour winds, and possibly wind gusts heading 40 or 50-mile-an-hour range. That's going to be near impossible to throw the ball to kick long field goals and could cause lots of fumbles and just poor passing play. So that surely will disrupt both of these offenses. We probably could lean to a lot of rushing props in this game, less points, maybe some turnovers, like I said, drives stalling out. Pittsburgh already runs the seventh fewest plays per game. Buffalo could also be without one of their main offensive threats in Gabe Davis. He looks like he should play, but has been injured throughout the week. The Bills have won 5 straight, but their wins are not coming by a lot of points. They did blow out Dallas by 21 points, but otherwise, those wins have been by 3, 2, 6, and 7 points. Pittsburgh's offense maybe has improved over with Mason Rudolph, but it's still this third stringer who couldn't get playing time earlier in the year, and an offense that's not putting up very many points, averaging just under 18 points a game. Rudolph's been effective, but he has just 3 touchdowns. They could lean on Najee Harris here and Jaylen Warren, specifically Harris in the short yardage game. Now, both of these teams are among the highest under teams this year at 11-6 to the under. If we go back to Harris, in his last 3 games, he's had his first, second, and 5th best games of the year in rushing yards with 78, 112, and 122 yards. Plus, he's had 4 rushing touchdowns as well. That equals half of his entire season-long output of 8. We ask him to simply get 25 or more rushing yards in a game where he should be handed the ball plenty of times with bad weather. He should be able to do that pretty easily. I'm going to tease this total back up to into the 40 range, past what it even started at, and we'll go under 45.5 on the alternate total in a same game parlay with Najee Harris to have 25 or more rushing yards, and that will be the third same game parlay, the third of 4 for the fourth one. Let's go back to Packers and Cowboys, and we'll go both teams to score 10 or more points in this game. For Green Bay, that prop would be 15-2 this season. The 2 times it didn't hit, They held the Rams to 3 with a backup QB and the Bears to 9 last week. They will not hold Dallas to under 10 this week in Dallas. For Dallas, it's hit also at a 15-2 rate this season. They held the Giants and the Patriots to 0 and 3 points early on in the season. Newsflash, the Packers are much better than the Giants and the Patriots, and that was a long time ago as well. To sweeten it up, let's include Dallas tight end Jake Ferguson to get 3 or more receptions, since just going both teams to score 10 points will not get us much. Now, Ferguson, he's second in targets, catches, and yards to CeeDee Lamb on Dallas. He's caught passes of 6, 4, 4, 6, 5, and 6 in his last 6 games, and he's had 3 or more catches in 14 of 17 games overall this year. There's been 3 or more tight end catches versus Green Bay in 14 of their 17 games this year. That's not necessarily to one tight end, but when it comes to Dallas, Jake Ferguson is the main man. He will likely be getting all the tight end catches. So this fourth same game parlay, which I will group into one bigger parlay, will be both teams to score 10 or more points, Packers and Cowboys, with Jake Ferguson to get 3 or more catches. So put all that together. Again, we've come in this time just over even money. It's plus 109. So that's Green Bay and Dallas both to get 10 points, with Ferguson to get 3 receptions. The Chiefs plus 8.5, with Rashee Rice to get 3 receptions. Houston and Cleveland both to get 10 points, with Njoku to get 3 receptions. Buffalo and Pittsburgh under 45.5, with Najee Harris to get 25 or more rushing yards, plus 109 odds. That wraps up this wild card weekend playoff picks for me. What are your picks? What are your totals, your parlays, your props? Be sure to drop them down there in the comments, and good luck with all of your NFL bets this weekend.